one in Greece.
Ah, Greece. Okay. Okay, this goes back to when I was heavy into the Ashtanga Kool-Aid again. Okay,
Yes.
there was like nothing else in the world that anybody should be doing with yoga other than Ashtanga Vinyasa Yoga. This is when I was living in South Beach in Miami, but I spent maybe 2 months a year there. I had an apartment there, a studio apartment, and I was traveling around the world, either teaching all the time or practicing all the time. It's like I said the other day, I was spending December and January in Kovalon Beach with Lino. Then I would go teach a retreat in Goa. Then I would go to spend a month or two in Mysore with Guruji. Then I would go teach in Asia, in Europe. Then I would join Lino in the summer in Europe for his 2-week retreat. Then I would go teach in South America. And then I would come back to Miami for a workshop or a training, and then I would be off again. This is what my life was for about 6 years. And I was practicing only with Lino and Guruji. And once in a while I would go to a workshop or something with some other teachers if it was convenient because I was around. But I met a group of some really cool practitioners in Mysore who were students of Graham Northfield. Has anybody ever heard this name? So Graham Northfield is another old Ashtangi from way back in the day, practicing with Pattabhi Jois in the original chalet I told you about when I practiced for 3 years with Pattabhi Jois, where there was room for about 8 of us, but we squeezed 12 in there every morning. Graham was there probably 15 years, 20 years before me, practicing with Pattabhi Jois when there was just a few of them at a time in the room. Graham is Australian, and his wife is Leonie. So Graham and Leonie were another like Ashtanga power couple that traveled around. They taught in Australia, and they taught in Asia, and they would go teach in the UK, and they did a retreat every year for a couple months in Greece for several years. And I met some English students and some Irish students and Americans that got to be regular students of Graham and Leonie. I met them in Mysore, and they were telling me about him, who he was, and I had heard who he was about him, and he had a badass practice, and he had a cone head. He had this weird disease, I forget what it's called, but he's got a shaved head.
Yeah.
But instead of his head being shaped like everybody is here, his head goes like this. It's a trip. It's amazing that he can do a headstand. So his head is literally shaped his skull like that. It's some condition that some humans are born with. So that's how he was. And and he had some other shit going on in his body when he started doing Ashtanga, and Ashtanga is something that really helped him heal and cure from a bunch of stuff. So these other yogis, Ashtangis, were telling me about how cool it is to go practice with Graham, and it's an intimate group. He doesn't have a lot of space. When he does a retreat, it's usually about 20 or so people, and it's much different than going practice with Lino. He has so many people now, and so I thought, I'm going to try that. After I'm with Lino, I'm going to be around near. I'll keep my schedule open. I'm going to go spend those 2 months on Paros with Grant. So I booked it, and I went there, having never met him, and I saw some other people that I knew from the yoga world from years past, from Ireland and from the UK and from France and from Scandinavia. But I met a lot of new people. And the first afternoon, we sat and we just did a chat. Everybody talked about, who their teachers were, what their practice is like, how much they practice. And Graham and Leonie wanted to hear from everybody, like, what is your practice? I practice second, I practice third, I practice primary, half second, whatever. I practice with Guruji here in Mysore, and I practice with Lino, I practice with Dina Kingsburg, I practice with all, Tim Miller, Richard Freeman, etc. And then the next morning, we came into practice, and it was a Mysore-based retreat, of course, very classical, traditional. We did breath work in the afternoons, ate amazing Greek food and drank amazing Greek wine every night. But the practice in the morning was in fucking tense. Okay, this guy was an animal, beast. And the first morning we chanted to start our practice, and he said, this morning, this first practice, I want everybody to do all the poses you know. And for those that had been with him before, they understood what that meant. And for those of us who didn't, wasn't clear. And somebody's like, huh, what do you mean? I want you to practice all the poses in sequence that you know. So if you know all of primary, you practice primary. If you know all of second, you practice all primary and all second. If you practice part of third, you practice all first, second, part of third, etc. Whatever you know. And I thought, fuck. And last night, he asked us what we practiced. So I couldn't say, oh, I only practice up to this point. So that meant I had to practice all of primary, all of second, all of third. in the first couple poses of fourth at that time. And my mind immediately went into like, how am I going to do that? Like, this is like, I'm used to practicing all of first and all of second with Lino, all of second and all of third with Lino, but I've never done all of first, all of second, all of third, and then the new poses that I've learned. And he was learning fifth series. He spent his time with Guruji learning up the fifth series. So he was like a whole nother planet. And there was only a couple other practitioners there that were doing some of third, not all of it. And the rest of them were like practicing primary or second or part of second. So I'm like, okay, here we go. And I just started going and going and going and going. And I decided in my mind, I at least understood enough of the practice from my experience. Like the way I was able to get through second and third with Lino or first and second with Lino was like this. The exercise I did with you today, where we learned up to, we counted through what we've learned so far, and I counted you through Surya Namaskaras, 2 standing forward bends, 4 steps to the right, 2 balancing poses in like 3 minutes. Okay, it was just one breath, boom, 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 boom. So I've learned that the more poses you do, the more efficiently you need to do it. Like I already knew, like, okay, 1 Surya Namaskara A and 1 Surya Namaskara B is more than enough, because primary series is like a warm-up for me, you know, to get to second, which is a warm-up to get to third and everything else. So I just started breathing, moving, cruising. Of course, I was the last one to finish. Okay, everybody else finished it, their primary part of second, part of third. And so as everybody was finishing and then doing their finishing sequence and then laying down and taking a rest and then getting up, and there I am again and still doing his practice, okay, and everybody's sitting around and watching, then now it's very intimidating, because I'm like, fuck, am I going to be able to do this? So Grant was there just watching me, letting me do my thing. He only adjusted me in a few poses. Leonie didn't come near me because she was working with the other students, because he decided that he was the one that was going to whip me. And I just kept going. And then once I got into the rhythm, I was like, we're going. Okay, I got this. This is easy. By the time I got the third series, after doing all of primary second, I was knackered. I was whipped, okay? But I'm going through all these arm balances and all these deep twists and all these legs behind the head, and kept going and kept going. And then by that time, everybody was done, just waiting for me to finish. And then he gets to the point and he starts helping me doing the 4 series poses, which were very new to me. So I'm doing this kind of crazy shit, turning my heels the other direction, and then finally finished, and then doing back bends, and he made me do back bends and drop backs and grab my ankles and everything like that. And then finally I finished. So, and then I was like, I took my time through the finishing sequence, and I remember how I felt when this was done. I was like completely wrecked, of course, but I felt amazing, incredibly charged, and like so like impressed by myself that I was able to like get out of my head and into my breath to that degree. Probably when I started using that expression, when I realized how powerful it was to get out of your head into your breath and just go, and just keep going. And when you can't go anymore, you just keep going. And when you know you can't go anymore, you just keep breathing and keep going and you keep going and you keep going. Okay. I didn't know this man then, but it was very David Goggins, like, you know, like, you just keep going, motherfucker. Just keep going. And when I came out of that, like some of the people that were there that I had just met the night before, some crazy Irish boys and stuff, they're like, fucking hell, I've never seen anybody do that many poses. I'm like, neither have I. I've never done that many poses either. What's that? Yeah. But these things that don't make sense and maybe shouldn't be allowed are nice to do once in a while, just as an expression of what's possible. Right. Like one of the things